to Reinforcement Talking. I'm Jen, your host for today's episode on AI and education. We've got here with us today one of our own professors from UCL, Wayne Holmes, to talk about some of the main implications of using AI in education, including the recent craze on ChatGPT. Along with being a lecturer at UCL, he is a consultant researcher on AI in education for UNESCO, a lead expert in AI in education for the Council of Europe, the lead for the UK Parliament's All-Party Parliamentary Group on AI Education Task Force, and the co-author of 3 books on AI in education. Thank you for coming and talking with us today, Wayne. Hello.
Hi, my pleasure.
So AI in education has been quite a hot topic recently, especially with the release of OpenAI's ChatGPT. However, the idea of using AI in education has been around since the 70s. But it's only as of recently that it's been realized as a powerful tool to open up what is sometimes called the black box of learning, giving us deeper and more fine-grained insights into how learning actually happens. This allows the field to be applied to all the different contexts in which learning occurs, from traditional classrooms to workplaces, to support formal education as well as lifelong learning. By bringing together AI systems with the learning sciences, AI ed tools encourage adaptive learning environments that are flexible, personalized, engaging, and effective. However, the use of AI in education also inevitably brings new challenges of ethical considerations, such as data privacy and security, fairness, accountability, bias, and agency. So, Wayne, I'm just wondering, just to give us a bit of an introduction about yourself, could you tell us a bit more about your area of interest within AI in education? What are you currently working on at the moment?
Sure. So I've been involved in AI in education now for about 10 years. And I'm interested in both the application of AI in education, so using AI tools, but I'm also interested in the teaching of AI. Both in terms of how it works and how we can create it, but particularly in terms of what does it mean for humans. So I see this as the two sides of the same issue, but really important that we don't forget that. So I've been working with UNESCO now for about 5 years, their unit for AI and technology in education, and with them we've published various reports, in particular a report called AI and Education Guidance for Policymakers, which has been translated into about 7 languages and is being used by ministries around the world. That's very exciting. The other piece of work I'm involved in at the moment is with the Council of Europe. That project has a pithy title, which is AI and Education, a critical view through the lens of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. And we're hoping this is going to culminate in a legal instrument that, if agreed in the Council of Europe, will then be rolled out to countries across 46 countries in Europe. And the other piece of work, I'm a senior researcher at the International Research Centre for AI, and which focuses on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so my remit there is, again, education.
Right. That's quite a rap sheet there. So what about for AI? So really recently in AI in education, the hot topic has been personalized learning. That, we can tailor the learning to our own unique interests and capabilities. So I'm just wondering if you can just talk about some of the implications of these technologies for the teaching profession. Do you think teachers can actually be replaced by these intelligent tutoring systems?
That question has so many sub-questions in it. If we speak to our AI colleagues, the engineers who are working on AI, they say immediately that their tools are not designed for replacing teachers. But at the same time, the tools that they've been working on for the past 40 years are about replacing teacher functions, because the argument goes that the systems can do this better than teachers. So I think that's, it's a moot point. There's no little evidence that that's true. And it kind of asks the question, what do we mean by better than teachers anyway? So do I believe that these technologies can replace teachers? No. Do I believe that these technologies are being used to replace teachers? Possibly. Given a classic example, if we talk about schools in rural areas and developing countries, where the children don't have teachers, qualified teachers, experienced teachers. And so the argument goes, well, look, if we can build the technologies, we could put them into those situations and so support those children with their human right for education. I just don't believe that. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, because what's happening is we're trying to say, well, in that situation, we put an AI system based on computers in this village, which probably doesn't have internet access, which probably doesn't have electricity all day long. And even if it does have those things, it probably doesn't have an engineer who can fix the computer when it goes wrong. So I guarantee that when those systems go into those kind of settings, they won't be working within a few weeks or months, and that'll be the end of it. Instead of that, instead of pretending that we can use this tech to replace the teacher in that setting, why on earth are we not looking at ways in which we can use the tech to support adults who are in the classrooms to become experienced, to have connections with other teachers and professionals in the cities? So instead of using the AI to do the job of the teacher, we should be focusing, in my opinion, on using AI to help teachers do their jobs, which is fundamentally different.
Right. So let's say if, for example, in these rural areas, let's say the digital divide was kind of taken care of, however that may be. If they had actually internet access in these rural areas, do you think these AI systems might actually make a difference?
Possibly, but it'd be quite a small difference. You know, and so the focus for me has got to be on a profession like teaching is about a human relationship between a teacher and the person being taught. And can't see that going. That is fundamentally important. Can we develop specific tools to help in specific situations? Possibly. But it really depends on what you're expecting these tools to achieve. What do you mean by education? Now, if you're talking about tools that help children pass their exams, can we develop those? Probably. But I'm not really interested in helping students pass exams. I'm interested in helping students develop and grow and learn stuff and be able to apply that stuff and engage in critical analyses of that stuff. The tools that currently exist and the trajectory has not been in that direction at all. And before you come back with another question, I wanted to pick up on the use of the word personalised. I mean, we've used it a couple of times already. And that is one of the big promises of AI technologies, that they will be personalised. Or they lead to personalised education. Again, it kind of really depends on what you mean by personalised. But the first thing to point out is that claim was made almost 100 years ago by B.F. Skinner about his teaching machine. It didn't happen then, it's not happened since, and it's unlikely to happen now. Why? Because it really depends what you mean by personalised. When people talk about personalised, if you're talking about personalised Netflix or personalised Amazon shopping, you're thinking about, well, I can see what I want to see. I can go in the direction I want to go. But the reality is the so-called personalised learning tools, the adaptive technologies you're mentioning, they don't do that. What they do is they are efficient ways to homogenise students. So it's all about making sure students can all know the same stuff, react in the same way, and achieve the same outcomes. That's not personalised.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting that you bring that up, because the recent release of ChatGPT by OpenAI brings in a lot of promises for personalized learning, or it can even actually personalize essays for you for students to claim as their own authentic work. Can you maybe talk about some of the implications of using ChatGPT in academia?
Sure. So I think, people are panicking at the moment. Firstly, ChatGPT is not a new technology. It's been around for 2 or 3 years, but it's just become more accessible just before Christmas. So that's why it suddenly hit the news. And yeah, people are using it and using it in lots of different ways. So its impact on education. Well, firstly, I think, can it be used for writing essays? Well, actually, with the current technology, it's quite hard to get it to write a full essay. And if you did, the quality of that essay, I'm talking about a bachelor's or master's level, the quality of the essay is not going to be acceptable. And it'd be very superficial, and a sensible academic who's assessing the essay will notice immediately that it's the way it's been put together. But in any case, essays are only used in assessment in a small proportion of university courses. And in all the other courses, then it's just not going to have an impact at all. Having said that, the ways in which students are beginning to use it, I think, is quite exciting, and they should be encouraged to use it more, but in open and transparent ways to admit to it. And it's engaging with the output, it's critiquing the output and all those kind of things, which are far more interesting. Myself, I've used it for inspiring bits of writing. I'm stuck, I'm looking at a blank screen, I got to write something. I ask ChatGPT. It gives me some great ideas, which I can then build upon and use. So I think it could be a really useful tool. But what we need to get away from is this idea, this fear that it's going to just, bring the pack of cards down with it, because I just can't see that happening. At the same time, we have, ChatGPT is just the first openly accessible, easily accessible such tool. Google have just announced that they're launching their tool. There are tools from other big companies. Meta is launching a tool. And at the same time, we have tools being launched that apparently can detect whether a machine has been used to write a piece of work. For me, this is nonsense. This is an arms race that no one's going to win. So, we get a better version of ChatGPT and we get a better detector. Then we get a better version of ChatGPT and then a better detector. It's just pointless. It's never going to end well. So instead, we need to think, well, how can we use these tools effectively, productively? How can we work with students so that they can get the best from these tools? This is the world we're now living in. Banning them, entire countries have banned the use of ChatGPT in their education systems. Personally, I think it's crazy. It's holding the water back, and we're not going to succeed in holding it back. So yeah, it's interesting. I read this morning, ChatGPT or OpenAI have released a blog this morning, which is looking at the use of ChatGPT in education. And interestingly, it does talk about personalization. And again, I think it's wrong. But some of the other things it talks about, sound really cool to me. The idea of using it to inspire discussion, to suggest ideas, to get students to think about, well, what does this really mean? I think is fascinating. And I also think, what this does is it takes it into other subject areas, such as if you're teaching literature, The reality is that if you give it the right prompt, ChatGPT can write a poem. When we then compare that poem with a poem written by a poet, what does that mean? What impact does that have on humans? Does this mean suddenly there's something that machines can do that as well as people? If it's true, does that matter? I mean, the point is, I don't know the answer to these questions, but I think these questions are really interesting questions that we should be looking at. And it's true with other generative AI, in pictures, in pieces of music. All of this, technologies out there is only going to become more accessible, easier to use over the next few months and years. And so we, put our head under the sand and pretend it's not happening, or we try and engage with it. And for me, it's trying to engage. And that's what I'll be getting my students to do.
So then, if you want your students to actually engage with these generative AI technologies, obviously, yes, you talked about getting inspiration for, starting your writing. However, how would you actually disincentivize students from actually using that? Because obviously, if they're under the pressure of deadlines and, time limits and, extreme amounts of pressures, if they have this tool that actually can get them a passing grade, why wouldn't they actually use that, right? So yes, it can be used as like an inspirational tool, but there obviously needs to be something in place to kind of stop that as well, right?
I mean, it's a huge question, right? And UCL have set up a body that's looking at these questions and what impact does it have? And there are no easy answers for sure. But I think what it comes down to is the use of such technologies, and this is true of all education technologies, it makes you think about the actual practices that we do in education. So it makes me question, well, if the machine can do this so effectively, why are we asking students to do it at all? So we need to think differently about how we assess students, because I agree with assessment, I agree with accreditation, I think they're both important. But how do we do that? That's the important thing, and that's what we need to start exploring. So if we don't start trusting students and think about the kind of trust relationships that we have with students, then of course they're going to do this kind of thing. But there's always going to be students who, for whatever reasons, will cheat, right? That's just life. But the vast majority of students who do cheat because they are challenged in many other ways. And so we as a university, we as lecturers, we need to think about that and think, well, how can we address that in different ways? I don't have the answer. I'm not suggesting I do, but it's a debate that we really need to engage with, to think about how do we encourage our students to make best use of this technology, open and transparent use of these technologies, and not go down the cheating route. It's just, there's little point.
I mean, you can kind of make the same argument with if you were look at calculators being introduced back in the day, right? I mean, some people talked about banning calculators because maybe we couldn't do actual arithmetics, but that never actually happened, right? We actually started to integrate calculators within our mathematical practices, etc. So I'm hoping that
I think it's similar, and I think Wikipedia is another example. When Wikipedia came out, everyone said never, don't use it, it's terrible. But actually, Wikipedia can be a brilliant resource to help you, to get you going when you're trying to investigate a new topic. And what was the other one I was going to mention? Oh, yeah, mobile phones. Mobile phones in classrooms. In schools, very often the mobile phones are banned. Those mobile phones are computers more powerful than the computer. It's apocryphal that put humans on the moon, right? But they're not allowed to use them. That's crazy talk. Using them in productive ways. That's where we need, in my opinion, where we need to get to.
Right. Awesome. I think, so that kind of sums up really our discussion for AI in education. So it seems like we kind of really want to embrace these AI technologies and see how these technologies can help us change society in better ways to kind of progress with these technologies rather than being scared of these kind of challenges and just kind of completely banning them. So thank you very much for joining us for our podcast, and we'll see you next time.